All right, we are not live. We are recorded. This is going to be a retake of a stream that we tried to do with Mike, a week ago now, where we had a couple little audio issues throughout the video, but didn't want to shortchange Mike and everyone watching. Wanted to make sure everyone could get some value out of it. So we are going to be recording basically the same stream today, but just hopefully fixing some of those audio issues for you guys so you can come back and reference this video as you tie the same flies. So welcome back, Mike. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for agreeing
Chris.
to it.
Appreciate it. I guess no voice of God this time, right?
Yeah. No kidding. So for those who might not have been tuning into the stream last week and are just watching us for the first time, let's hear a little bit about you. So Mike, we came to know you probably a few years ago now, kind of close to when the shop opened up, but since we got to know you, you've become just an amazing tyer. You're blowing us away every week with what you're coming out with. How'd you get into tying? Like, what's your story there?
Yeah, you know what? It's just I kind of just fell into it. I knew there's going to be a long off season here in Ontario, and I thought, why not? Try a new hobby, try something new out. And I didn't really think I'd get into it, and it just kind of exploded. I guess I don't know. I think that's the case for a lot of people, but it took over, and I've been loving it. It's a learning curve, right? It's a big. Nothing comes easy. You got to practice it to get good. You can't just hop into it and expect that you're going to be tying the perfect flies. But over time, as you get to know the patterns and concepts and proportions, I'd like to say proportions are a big one. You get better and better, and you start getting noticed, like I did from you guys, right? So
hard not to notice there. That must be a struggle. You talk about it taking over, and I think a lot of us can relate to that, and just how much it can take over, how much space it can take over. You've got roommates, so living in a downtown condo. You must be really efficient with your space use.
You know what? It was a prerequisite. I let my roommate know that I better get the room that has enough room for my fly tying desk. So gotcha. I made sure that was a prerequisite moving in.
Very smart.
But, you know what? It's great right now. We're sitting at home, on our own quite a bit right now. So it's what better way to to occupy your time and tie a bunch of flies and stuff like that. So I'm sure you can attest to that as well. So
yeah, there have been a few boxes filled. I think at the end of this, we're gonna see fly box sales just go through the roof.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Cool. So, little intro to what we're doing. We've got you actually coming back again in about a week and a half time to do another stream. But today we're going to do a couple of your favorite flies for the credit, right? Is that the idea?
Yeah. 3, for the people that have already seen it, it's 3 flies. There's a kind of a nymph, a merger style pattern, a dryfly, a spinner, and then I'm going to do a little Zuddler streamer pattern to finish it off. But yeah, 3 for the credit. I encourage people to use them, and yeah, for sure. Let's. Why don't we start tying?
All right, let's hop into it.
Okay. Right. So first off, I'm going to switch over the cameras. It's not going to be this crappy camera. Hopefully, this doesn't affect anything in terms of sound or video. But we'll switch over to this guy.
Nope. Maybe. We do not have that camera.
It'll go.
There we go. There it is.
Is it not centered? Let me know.
If you can move the vise a little to your right, or actually, I don't know which way you're facing this vise. Oh. Sorry, other way. There you go. Beauty.
And then in terms of focus, it's all good?
Looks very nice to me. Very crisp.
Okay, cool. So this is going to be the first of 3. This is a Guide's Choice Hares here. Normally, people will throw a bead on the front. I like tying non-bead nymphs.
Mm-hmm.
I tie with beads as well, but I tie a lot of non-bead just because the Credit River in particular, it's very highly trafficked. There's a lot of people there, and I find sometimes not using a bead can prove beneficial on the water. So I tie a lot of my nymphs without the bead, just kind of like that. I'll add weight. I'll add lead, so it compensates, and I'll add split shot to the line. So.
Yeah.
I believe that was one of the questions before, was how are we?
Yeah, we had somebody kind of inquiring, because we do hear a lot about, our presenter last night, Ian Troop, he's showing us some of his favorite sort of euro nymphing flies. I think that's sort of become the dominant tactic these days. But yeah, the classics are still definitely worthwhile investigating. Like you say, can have their day in the sun for sure. So you're
For
mostly
sure.
an indicator guy when it comes to fishing these guys, or do you tight line it with split shot, or how do you go about it?
Yeah, you know what? I'll throw an indicator on there. I do a little bit of Euro stuff, but I do a lot of swinging. So
Perfect.
I just actually bought actually Chris, you would know I bought a Commando smooth head and like just a single hand space setup. So I tie a ton of soft hackles. So I'm kind of that guy that kind of you're thinking about steelhead fishing all summer long, trout fishing, right? So
Sure.
just swinging little short soft tackles, short drifts for trout. So that's super fun. So I love that part about it. But I mean, you could go about it in any way to fish this. It doesn't have to be swinging. Doesn't have to be Euro nymphing. You can do whatever you want with this guy. So.
Very nice. And that'd be a great steelhead nymph too, I'm sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, just size it up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. All right,
All
let's
right.
hop into it.
So we'll get into this. So this hook, it's a Mustad hook, and I believe this is a S82. Yeah, this is an S82, size 14. So it's a little bit longer, and I like it that way. I just like I find this on a size 16, the proportions are correct on the 3XL. So, but first we're going to start out. I put on 015 lead. This is lead-free wire, and I put about 6 wraps on there. And I find that's I kind of just size it up to the size I want the thorax to be, and I find that's kind of a good reference point. And then as for thread, I'm using just 12-aught Veevus in red. If you can see that 12-aught.
Yeah, kind of. We know what you're talking about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
So yeah, we'll start that thread right behind the lead there,
Yeah.
and I just kind of wrap it over.
We were
And I
talking
want it
about
the lead to be about an eye back from the eye.
Yep. Always leave a little room. It's a good tip. That's interesting. Like, yeah, we were talking about that with Ian last night too. One of his favorite thread and hotspot colors be red as well. I think it gets overlooked. I mean, it's popular, but also I don't know, not. I think a lot of people sort of think, chartreuse's orange is a lot.
For sure,
Red's
for
great.
sure. I think on the guide's choice hares here is like if you look at it, it's normally red. I used to tie them actually in bright orange.
Oh yeah.
But I shifted to the red just to go with the classic.
I think red's sort of it's a nice subtle kind of hotspot.
For sure.
Breaks things up
and it's
a bit.
Like, I don't know, that blood color, who knows, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It works for me. So for the tail on this, I'm gonna use a shoulder feather from the Partridge, Hungarian Partridge. You can get one of those packs, or I mean, you can use Coq de Leon or any kind of tailing. I love using this the shoulder, a little bit of color in it.
Yeah.
And I just take off a few fibers there. I don't know the exact amount, probably 6 or something. And I measure it about the length of the body, and then I go a little bit shorter, and I find that's kind of the sweet spot for my tails. And we'll just secure that in on top. And that's a good size for the tail. And now when I wind back like that, I'm always pulling those tails towards me. So it's not going to go and wrap around the other side. I'm always pulling it a little bit towards me. That's good. Now for the ribbing, I'm gonna put in, this is just a fine gold wire. And I bump it up right against the lead wraps there. And I'll show you on that side how to do it. And I'm just going to do it on my side. And I bump it up right against the lead wraps. And just keep it on my side. Try and keep it as level as possible.
And that's just
And,
kind of maintain that taper over the butt?
yeah, just to maintain the taper. And then what I do is I build up a taper with my thread.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of just, when you're going to dub it on, you don't really have to worry about, making a taper dubbing noodle because it's already done with your thread wrap. So you just kind of, just throw the noodle on your thread there and you're good to go.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good one.
And now I'm just going to be using, this is a guide's choice, Hare's Ear. I'm going to be using Squirrel Dubbing, which is what I like to use. You can use Hare's Ear if you want. And I just use a natural color. I'm going to dub it on my thread here. Make a nice little noodle. Try and go somewhat sparse. I always turn the vise away from me too, so I can get right up in there and make it nice and tight right at the start. Because I find right at that base, right at the tail, it's I like having it nice and tight.
It's actually an interesting tip. I've never considered doing that with ANCAV material or anything to get a little closer.
Oh yeah, just turn it away from you,
Yeah.
and then it's easier to spin up there. And I get it to right at the start of those lead wraps.
So you'd probably call that about maybe 2/3 up the shank at this point.
Yeah, I'm always, you know what, I find a good tip for tying flies is, when you put that, I come from a visual arts background, and what I did when I was in the arts, you have your blank canvas, and you look at your canvas and you envision what you want your finished product to look like. And I take that and I use it with fly tying. I put my hook on the vise, blank hook, and you look at that hook and envision what you want your finished product to look like when you're done. And, you'd be surprised, what percentage of the time it'll actually turn out the way you kind of envisioned it from the start. So I find that's a good tip. I look at my hook for a second, just as you would when you're getting to the water. You kind of just sit there and assess the situation. I take that little tip and I use it with fly tying too. And now for the wraps, I wrap it 3 times, and I'm going to wrap it the opposite way. Maybe 4 wraps of the dubbing that I put on. And then I always reverse my thread when I tie that wire in.
That's a
I
great
use
one.
the wire.
Could you slow down that process? Because I know whenever we do like tying classes in shop, I show that one off. It always takes a couple tries before people can see what's going on.
It's actually, yeah, I know. You know what? When I first started hearing about it, I thought, oh, they were saying, oh, it's not that complicated, and I was always like, oh, that looks so complicated. It's actually not complicated at all. You're using that wire. I don't know if I could put it this way. You're using that wire to reverse the angle of the thread. So if I'm going to go forwards, I'm going to wrap my thread around that wire, use that wire to go the other way.
Kind of anchor your thread.
Yeah, and then use that to go this way.
And why are you doing that?
And that just locks in the wire. I find, too many times I haven't done that, and I've just tied it in right at the end. And then you fish it a couple runs, and you look at your fly, and the lead wire, the wire is all unraveled, and your fly's falling apart. So it just locks in that wire, so you don't have to worry about it later on.
Yep.
And it's easier. It's easier to helicopter off. It's going to be like, no problem.
Pretty securely held in a specific point, for sure.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I totally agree. It does make things more secure. Personally, I don't know if you do this. I only do that if I'm counter ribbing. Right? So you wrapped the wire backwards against the direction of your thread. If I was wrapping it forwards, I would probably just tie it off straight. I don't know if you do. Yeah.
I tied it off straight. So you know what? It's all up to you. I mean, you could put glue in there and it'd do the same thing. It would tighten it up.
That's perfectly fair. Yeah. In my mind, I'm always thinking.
I started doing it, and that's the way I always do it now. Well, at least with wire. When I'm tying in tinsel or whatever, I'll just tie it off. No problem.
Wire's just got that memory built into it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Now, I know there was a question about this. I'm putting in a wing case now. I'm using wing and flash, and this is kind of just the really fine, kind of like ice dub, but just completely straight and super long.
Yep.
And I use this for my wing case. I just find it kind of grabs. I'm going to put a Peacock wing case, a thorax on there. And the wing case with the wing and flash, it just kind of grabs that thorax. It kind of hugs it. Versus like if you were going to put, I don't know, Flashaboo or something like that in, it's kind of like a sharp edge. It's just a personal preference. I find, I just think it looks better when it, on the finished product. But I started using this on my wing cases, and I find it looks quite good at the end. So
yeah, that's cool.
I'll continue to do
look,
it. Yeah.
sure.
So I just attach it in on top like that, maybe with a couple wraps, and then I come in there with my thumb, and I just kind of spread it out so it's flat, straight on top.
Nice.
Just like that, like you would with pheasant tail or whatever. And then next, I'm just going to put 2 fine strands of Peacock Herl and just attach those in.
You can't build up a little.
Round off of the thorax.
Yeah. So you're just kind of smoothing that out so it'll wrap on better.
Yeah, exactly. And I find with Peacock too, if you don't do that and it's all, hard edges, it could break off. So I just kind of just wrap it around so it doesn't break. And then just wrap it up. You could use Hackle pliers. I've always just used my fingers. And then just snip that off. And then I have a kind of a cool trick for so I'm going to put in legs right now. And this is with Hungarian Partridge again. I prepared the feather. You kind of prepare it like that into a V.
Yeah, so just snip the tip out.
Yeah, then you snip the tip out. And you find on the back, you try and find where the stem gets a little thin. And that's where I kind of work as a reference point to tie it in. And then I just lay it on top. And kind of with your thumb and index, pinch it, both sides. And then just 2 loose wraps over that, super loose. And then you pull the wing case over. And then another 2 loose wraps over that wing case. And then what I do is I just pull that stem of the partridge until you get your desired length of leg. Now I find with partridge, a lot of the feathers, they're not long enough. Short enough to palmer it. There's a few, but there's not a lot.
Yep.
So I'm always, you're figuring out different ways to get those legs in. And I find that desired length, for me at least, is just past the end of the abdomen there. The legs. A little bit.
That looks awesome.
What do you think, Chris? What's your reference?
Fishy. That's great. Yeah, reference probably, similar.
For legs, yeah.
I think, if you're going to tie legs, a little bit of a longer leg for me. Like, yeah. I would consider this on the longer side of, what I see at least. You see a lot of pheasant tails and things tied with really short, stubby ones. But at that point, you're just like, it's going to be really stiff and stout. So I think those longer legs are just money. I think that's great.
Yeah, if you're going to put legs in, you might as well, have the fish see them, right? And I find, I love Hungarian Partridge, and one of the big reasons why I love it is because of that modeling, right? The black, the white. And I find if you look at a nymph, like if you go flipping rocks and you look at their legs, they have a similar modeling, right? Yep. So I don't know. I find it's probably something like, something that the fish key in on. And I've always used it. I find, my nymphs with the Hungarian Partridge on it over the nymphs that don't. At least for me, they catch a little bit more fish. So
Yeah.
I use them religiously.
Oh, that's awesome. And it's also, of course, just like a crazy soft fiber. So the movement that you get out of that, compared to pheasant tail or, some other fibers, I think is just wicked.
Oh, for sure. It's the king of soft hackles for sure. Anyway, so that's my
Nice.
guide choice hares here, and I fish that a crazy ton of times. I fish it all the time.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Cool. That's a great start.
Yeah. So next, I'm gonna tie a spinner pattern. This is a gray fox spinner. You could tie this style pattern in in a Hendrickson or BAWO or whatever. I just
Sure.
I like this hatch, and I find for spinner falls, this is kind of the one that I'm keying in on the upper credit most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a long hatch. It was almost all summer last year. I remember almost ton of the times I was going to the water, it was they were coming off. So
yeah, I find that hatch can be kind of sporadic sometimes, but it does very drawn out, which is nice. You always have a few around.
It's I was seeing them late summer too, and
yep. And then I mean you get the the Isonychias coming off, sort of starting late July all the way through September too, and they're sort of similar size. And I think I mean you've apart from maybe early season, usually got a bug about this size flying around somewhere. So that's nice.
Oh, for sure. And this is a size 14.
That looks pretty long. Is that an R43?
You got it. So that's an R43. I like these for spinners.
Yep.
Just to exaggerate that body a little bit. Just got to switch up my thread here. I'm going to use a 12-aught again in Veevus. And this is going to be brown or camel or whatever. You can use whatever color you want. Yeah. I love this 12-aught Veevus thread though.
It's such a good thread. It's a nice size. It's a good in-between size.
I use it a lot. I use it for my nymphs. I use it for my dries. It's great. It's a great thread. And I'd like to talk about that too. Threads. It's not really straightforward, I find. And when I started first tying, I didn't really understand threads too much. But at least for Veevus, you could tie most of your streamers with 8-aught or 6-aught thread.
Mm-hmm.
When you go to tying in big pike stuff and stuff like that, it's GSP. But most of my nymphs, it's on like 12-aught. And sometimes 14. What do you say, Chris? What do you tie on?
Yeah, it depends a little bit on what I'm tying. I'm not too fussy for most flies, 10-aught, 12-aught. I kind of hang around there. I'll go 8 for most of my streamers. I don't actually use much 6-aught. And then,
it's a weird thread. That 6-aught's a weird one in Veevus.
It's great when you're starting out. It's a very forgiving thread. Like that stuff's crazy strong, but if you're comfortable going 8, I think 8 is probably the better one, even for like steelhead stuff for myself. And then I'll just jump straight up to like power thread for most of my big trout streamers and stuff. And then 16 usually for dries.
Yeah, for sure. I've started using that power thread. It's pretty cool.
It's wicked thread. We have sold so much of that stuff. It's a ridiculously nice thread to tie with.
No, for sure. For the big stuff, and it's just high breaking strength. Like it's
got way more. I find it has way more grip to it than. Sorry, not to hijack this fly, but than gel spun. Yeah, it's just the best of both worlds. I think it's really cool stuff.
For sure. So yeah, we'll start on this. I'm gonna start this with a 12-aught again in brown, and I kind of just make a pad. It's gonna be a spinner, so I make a little pad. I'd say about an eye back. I'm always an eye back from the eye, and I make a little pad where I'm gonna rest those spinner wings.
And is that to help secure the materials, or is that more of a visual marker for you?
Yeah, a little bit of both.
Yeah,
a little bit of both. I kind of just I like to tie it in right at. I make it about 2 eyes length, and then I tie my my wings in right there forward. I'm going to use for the wings, I'm going to use snowshoe rabbit foot. and I just pick it off the bottom. You can see where I've been picking it off, but just trying to find some long fibers on there. And I snip a little bit off, you know, take a little bit of the longer ones out, pull them out, take the underfur out like you would with deer hair and stuff. And what I do is I tie it in facing the eye of the hook.
Tips forward.
Tips forward. There you go.
And measurement on that is what, about shank length?
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, about a shank length, the entire shank.
Yeah.
I'd like to say that's a good question. Oh, they're all falling out. Yeah, about a shank length, I'd like to say.
Sure. Yeah.
And I cord up my thread.
And cording is?
Spinning my thread, I spin it counterclockwise.
Yeah.
Or clockwise, I should say, sorry. Yeah, you cord it up so that it makes it a little bit easier to grab that material.
Another cool thing about cording as well, it's a good technique, is depending on which way you twist your thread, I'm sure you know this, Mike, but just for those that don't, depending on which way you twist it, when you make your initial loose wrap, you can actually get to like kind of curl back into your fingers, so it's easier to control where you place stuff. It's you have to kind of play around with it to see what I mean, but it's a cool technique for sure.
Yeah, well, you know, yeah, I was just talking. Honestly, it's just like a natural thing for me, but I think it's counterclockwise I spin it.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I mean, none of us think about this stuff when it's
yeah,
we're
you
tying
know
for
what? It's
ourselves.
just kind of like I just do it. I don't really think of it or talk about it. This is all new for me. I don't really instruct much on how to tie flies. So, yeah, you'll find with this the snowshoe rabbit foot too. It's like it's super easy to grab versus with your thread versus a synthetic.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a bucktail or deer hair or something like that. It's just really nice to work with.
Yeah, really nice and soft.
Yeah. And now what I do is I just work it back and just taper off the end.
So when you initially cut that, did you cut it at an angle?
I did. I cut it at a little bit of an angle. And I find once I start, you know, taking out most of those fibers out of the end, it'll taper itself kind of thing.
Sure.
But you can also cut it, like if there's a ton of butt ends, you just cut it at an angle and taper it down, or work your thread and taper it as you go.
Yep.
And now what I do is I just work it up and then you pull those back and then I make a little, actually, you know what? I want it a little bit more forward. So I kind of like use that, you know, about an eye back or a couple eyes back as a reference. That's good right there. So I'll pull it back, and then what I do is I just kind of make a dam right behind them. I want them to start standing straight up, the fibers. That's good.
Right on.
And I'm constantly wetting my fingers with this stuff and kind of just controlling it because it's going to get in your way, I guarantee it. And now I just work my thread back, and we're going to put a little dubbing ball in there. Now we're going to put a dubbing ball just to kind of splay out our tail. And it's going to be a V'd tail. I use these Mayfly tails. They're synthetic. And you need a little bit of give in order to get them to kind of splay out. You could use glue too. But I find just putting a little dubbing ball back there just makes your life easier.
Could kind of give it the impression of an egg-laying spinner as well, which is nice, I guess.
That's a good point. Yeah, I guess you could put like you know, like yellow thread or pink or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are definitely patterns that do that for sure. It's not an original idea on my part by any means. But I mean, even if it wasn't a colored thread, I mean, spinners, you know, a lot of time we're talking about evening or nighttime kind of falls, and so, you know, there's got to be a point at which color isn't so important, but silhouette is. So.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Who knows how much they're keying in on that? You can do whatever you want, or use. I know Loon's got some cool UV stuff. You can put a little a lot of that back there.
Yeah.
Now for the tails, I just use they're Mayfly tails, just synthetic ones like that. And I measure it. I put it at about the length of the entire hook and a half. So I want it kind of long.
Yeah,
and I
gray
just tie it
foxes.
in. Yeah, they're pretty
They've
long.
got that really
tails
long
on the
tail.
spinner.
Yeah.
And I just tie it straight in on top. And as you work your way back, you move the fibers to either side of the hook. I want it on each side of the hook as you finish, so that dubbing ball you put in kind of splays them out. Takes a little bit to get used to, but figure it out.
Beautiful. Can we see what that looks like from above once you're done?
Yeah, so I'll show that. That's what it looks like.
Very nice.
From above. And you're good. Once you've secured that, those aren't gonna go together anymore. So I'm gonna snip off those butt ends of the fibers right there. And just kind of cover that up. What I love about this 12-aught is, you don't really have to worry about your thread wraps. Although I'd like to say, concentrate, be aware of how much you're putting on, but at least it's a little bit more forgiving with a 12-aught.
Yeah. So, that's a great descriptor for sure.
Yeah. And then I'm just going to use, this is Superfine dubbing, and this is in a cream color. And if you catch one of those spinners in the evening in June, you'll see they're cream colored. So I'm trying to imitate that.
Like you say, though, you could adapt this pattern kind of for any bug. Maybe adjust the. I mean, I'm not a huge believer that color is a huge factor for spinners, but
Totally,
size and color.
Totally, yeah. Well, it's an evening thing too,
yeah, exactly.
Right? But
yeah, you could easily adjust all this. It's a great all-purpose dry you have here.
Oh, of a spinner to any pattern. I know, we were using it for some of the Hendrickson spinner falls and stuff like that, and
yeah,
I just like using synthetics. I mean, naturals for the wings. I find that snowshoe hair. It's you don't really have to work with floating that much, and at night it's a quick time slot where the spinner fall's happening. So you don't want to be fumbling around with your floating and all that when the spinner fall's happening. So
yep.
I like to just use the natural stuff. I don't have to really worry about it. Maybe I put on a little bit, but you'll be surprised. This stuff floats.
Yeah, it's good to have confidence knowing that you can just kind of blindly cast and believe that it's floating out there somewhere.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I make that noodle up, and I go about just a little bit back from the wings there, and then what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to separate them into two spinner wings. And just kind of do a figure eight. Just split them up.
Nice.
And then I go around each base of the wing.
Would you be able to kind of turn your vise as you do that so we can see
the
angle of the wraps there?
So for now, yeah, that's what it looks like right now.
And you're wrapping around initially sort of in an X pattern, but now around each. Yeah.
Yeah, so around each base of the wing, like you would with a parachute post. It's a lot more difficult than I thought it would be.
Yeah, again, unfamiliar feelings for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you get them into two wings like that. I like it a little bit more bushier than that, but I lost a few putting it in. So, but yeah, that's kind of what it looks like. And then what I do is I put in a piece of foam for a wing case. Now I do this; it just keeps it floating. And also, it's a cider, so I'm using nice white foam, and it's kind of like that. You're gonna put a white parachute post. It's a similar kind of thing. You can see it at, when it's the sun's going down. So.
That's a 2mm foam by the looks of it.
Yeah, 2mm foam, and I just cut a little strip off the foam and just tie it in right there. And then again with your Superfine, make a noodle, and then we're gonna figure eight it the way we figure eighted it for the to put the wings in, kind of thing, same kind of thing. And I'm always flipping it just to see if I'm covering everything, flipping my vise.
Great benefit to the old Renzetti.
Sorry, you cut out there, Chris. What'd you say?
The great benefit of the old Renzetti.
Oh yeah. I love the rotary stuff, man. It's, if you don't have a Renzetti, highly consider it if you're into tying. It's a game changer for sure.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna put a little bit more. And then what I do is you pull that foam over like a wing case, and you just tie it in right at the eye. And just snip it off nice and close, and then we'll just cover up the rest of that foam. And then we'll just throw in a whip finish. And that fly is ready for June.
Can't come soon enough.
I cannot wait, I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's gonna sneak up. Always does, but doesn't feel like it right now.
I know. It's really cold right now. It's in end of January, and it's like minus, 16 or something like that. But yeah, that's my little gray fox spinner. Yeah, so like I said, that's it from the bottom. You can tie this in a number of different patterns, and it'll work just fine. I know Drift's you guys got a bunch of snowshoe hair, so.
Yeah, there was a bit of a drought on that stuff for a while. I remember
there was
a couple of years back now, but it was just impossible to find. We've got a pretty good source at the moment, so yeah, get it while you can. One will last you for a while.
Yeah, for sure.
Those things.
Yeah, I just I bought one. I think this is just like a cream colored one, but it works for most patterns. It's usually later on at night or evening time, so I wouldn't worry too much on that either, color wise. Now, so for third pattern, I need you, Chris, as a reference here. I just want to know if I'm.
Oh yeah, you might be a little too zoomed in for this one. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Actually, I gotta find my hooks here for a second. I'm gonna use a size 6.
Going big to close it out.
Yeah. So this is a size 6 R73.
That's a 3
Mustad streamer hook, and I put a little gold brass cone on it. And I'm gonna change
it's gonna be a little tight. You're able to zoom out just a bit.
Yeah. I'm gonna pull this back. Let me know how the.
Could be good there. Keep going. Yeah, a little further. Sorry, yeah, focus wise.
Oh, focus.
Framing are good. I don't know if you can see the focus easily. Yeah, that's good. Looks great.
That's good?
Yep.
Okay, good. So yeah, size 6 with the brass cone. And then in order to secure that in there, I know some guys they use little glass beads, and that's a cool little technique. You just throw the glass bead in there, and then I actually had a ton of glass beads. I just don't know where they went.
Interesting.
So I started using.
I've never seen that.
I started using just super thick lead wire. I use this 035, and I just wrap 3 wraps on there. Nothing crazy. And I just shove that in there. Kind of works similar to a glass bead.
Yeah. That's interesting, the bead technique. I've never done that before. Another interesting one I do know of is if you want to add like a whole bunch of weight to a fly, is to, after the cone, put on a whole other like brass or tungsten bead behind it. It kind of fits up into it. And
yeah. Well, that's a good call too. I always it frustrated me quite a bit trying to keep that bead
yeah.
still.
Well, there's so much empty space in there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Especially with the brass, it's pretty hollow.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, what I'm using here, it's A-dot Veevus thread in white, and this is going to be my Zuddler pattern, last pattern, and I am going to just wrap it back till that barb or the bend of the hook. All right, so I'm going to be putting in some, this is rabbit Zonker strips in gray.
Right on.
I'm just going to snip off a little piece there. And what I do is I measure the leather on the back of the strip. I measure it about an entire hook length long, and that's where I'm going to be tying it in. So about that long. And just kind of peel back the fur there and find your tying point.
Cool.
There we go. Now I just flip it upside down, and I just put a little glob of super glue down there just to make sure that Zonker strip is not going to go anywhere.
Mm-hmm. We've actually got a video coming out on just using rabbit next week. But until it comes out, worth noting the direction you pointed your rabbit there, just in case it's not entirely obvious to somebody starting out. It kind of has a grain to it, right?
Back? Like facing back?
Yeah, so if you look at your rabbit strip, you can kind of see the grain there, how it all flows back. That's just good.
Yeah,
nice flow.
Yeah, so always facing back. I tie a lot with rabbit. I love it.
It's a great material.
Steelhead patterns, trout stuff. I find it just works, and it's fairly easy to work with when you're tying. So I use it a lot. Now for the body, I'm just going to throw in a dubbing loop.
I know you mentioned this last stream, but just to touch on it again, the dubbing loop there, or maybe it was Jack, I'm thinking of a couple streams ago, I was talking about this, but you wrap your thread around the dubbing loop as well, yeah?
Oh, yeah. So to put it in, if you want me to redo it, I'll just redo it.
I think it's a good tip for folks.
Yeah, for sure. It was always a little bit confusing to me anyways. I've never really unwound it, but...
Okay.
So I wrap once over and kind of, I don't know if you can see that, I'll hold it in my finger there, the loop. And then what you do is I wrap that thread around the loop to kind of lock it in. I wrap my bobbin around there a few times.
And that just kind of seals the loop tight, right?
Yeah.
Draws those two lengths of thread nice and tight together.
Yeah, and then I wind my thread up to about a cone back from the cone, and then I throw in a 1/2 inch right there, just so that bobbin's not going to go anywhere. A little tough to do it with 2 hands. And then I just put my bobbin aside I actually learned that tip from you, Chris.
Oh yeah.
Not using the cradle. I just kind of just put my bobbin aside
Yeah.
and
Not a great way
we're
for us to be selling cradles, but I do the same thing. You just pull out a bunch of thread and set it on your table. That's my
yeah.
go-to.
Honestly, I never thought about it, but I use it all the time now. I just kind of just set it aside and then wind your thread back up when you need to use it. So
Yeah.
and now for the body, I'm just going to use ice stub, and this is in pearl. I use this stuff a lot. I buy a crap ton of it, and I pitch them about an inch and a bit.
I feel like we might
Word?
see some of that in your bucktail stream.
Yeah, for sure. I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to be using this. I'm going to be using that wing and flash as well.
Yeah.
Not a crazy amount. I like to be subtle with my flash, but I do like to include it. So, but yeah, you'll definitely be seeing it on the 4 coming up.
We can't really see that, but you had a dubbing twister in there. You just
sorry, yeah. So I have a dubbing twister in there.
That's a tough one to see.
I pinched about an inch. I put it in there and I just spun it up quick. I don't use a dubbing tool, a dubbing brush, and tease it out. I just kind of leave it in there. I'll do that afterwards. And just kind of butt it up right against the hide of that zonker, and just wind that up. It doesn't need to be touching turns.
I think that's actually not a bad technique for people, because everybody's kind of taught, okay, spin your dubbing loop and then pick everything out, right? Yeah. But you're using this more like a chenille than I think a lot of people, depending on the purpose. Like I think a lot of dubbing loops are used for like stations and intruders and things where you want a nice, tight tie-in point and long full-length fibers. But you're using this more like a chenille, like a cactus chenille, where it needs to be kind of bulky.
Funny you say that. I actually used, in this pattern in particular, I used chenille for the longest time.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, I just, I got to using ice stub. I use ice stub now. It's my kind of substitute. I use it more, like where you would normally use chenille, I'm using ice stub. It's just, I don't know, personal preference. You can use chenille. There's no rules here. Now I dub it out. So I kind of, whenever I dub this stuff out, I go forward. I dub it all forward and then back. And kind of to either side of the hook. And just to tame it, I wet my fingers and kind of pull it down. That's a little bit better. And so I just tie this in right on top of that.
And you are not parting the hair this time. You're trying to catch a few extra hairs as well from.
Yeah, I want that. I used to tie it in just right at the hide there. But I like that bump.
Yeah, it gives you a nice little bit of bulk.
Yeah, so like it ends right there, right? But there's a bump. It just doesn't slant down. I don't know. Just a personal preference.
Yeah, sure.
I like to do it. And then just try and snip that off nice and tight. And that looks pretty good to me. And now I'm just going to tie in a collar. This is a deer body hair in gray. For natural, you can use natural. There's no rules here. And I kind of try and snip out about, you know what? I forgot my stacker. I'll be able to do it without it, I think. One tool. I knew I would forget something. I'll be able to do it without it. Yeah. Might not look perfect, but this stuff's pretty good. Yeah, I switched locations. This spot in my apartment's a little bit closer to the router, so I'm hoping this works in terms of connection.
It's funny. I think almost all of our tires have done that, where they've set up somewhere, because I request that you set up close to a router just to be on the safe side. And yeah, everybody's always forgetting stuff. I'm sure I will tomorrow too.
Yeah, so normally I'm right at my desk, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's not really the case right now. Anyways, I pull about a pencil width worth of hair out. I do maybe a little bit under the pencil width. Color is not going to be the prettiest because it's not stacked, but it's okay. And then I measure it about, right to the back of that hook right there.
Mm-hmm.
I want that collar to be. And just tie it in right on top. And I cord up my thread when I go to tie it in. Spinning it counterclockwise. And then just tie it right in on top.
So you aren't letting that twist or spin, you're just stacked
Yes,
right on top.
so you're keeping your it's constantly pinched on there, just so it doesn't move around. And then I just wrap it in a few times. And give it a look, see if it's looks how you want it to look. I know it's not the prettiest because I haven't stacked it.
Got a nice natural taper to it, we'll say.
That's okay. And then I just spin it upside down, and what I do is I put a little bit of glue. I got a big glob here. I put a little bit of glue right where I put those wraps.
Sure.
And that way, that stuff's not going to go anywhere, that collar. I like to do that with my deer hair collars. And then we'll just pull that forward. And then the final step is we're going to spin a little bit of deer hair right behind that cone. And that'll help to finish it off. And I snip off about a pencil worth again.
Mm-hmm.
And then just take out all the under fur and the small hairs and stuff like that. I like to spend a little bit more time doing this. That's something you learn when you tie a lot with deer hair. You learn if you spend a little bit more time doing this, you're going to have a better time with deer hair. I've had too many nights where you get super frustrated and you say, I'm never tying with deer hair again. But I find myself coming back.
It's worth the price of admission sometimes.
Yeah, you know what? I love tying with deer hair. It does it gets me pretty frustrated sometimes, but when you get used to it, it works out.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what I did was I cleaned it all out and I snipped the tips off. You don't really need to stack it, not that we did. And I cord my thread up and just kind of place it on top there. And we'll do one full wrap. And then once we get it to the top again, you let go.
Just let it do its thing.
Spin around, do its thing. And then once it stops spinning, you know you're good. And then just kind of work your thread forward.
This is another fly, I think. This is a great example of just a super versatile fly. Like, that's a really nice trout fly, but, for bass, for steelhead again, you can fish that thing for anything.
Oh, for sure. It's super versatile. I find it works really well on the upper credit.
Yep.
I use this for brook trout. The initial patterns I was tying were super simple. And it works. I fish it for brook trout, early evening kind of thing, and it's just lights out. You'll find when people are getting off the river, I stick around a little bit longer.
Yep.
And it ends up paying off. There's not many people. No one sticks around. You kind of like plan your day out, and then as soon as it starts getting dark, most people are tired and they end up wanting to go home. But
yep, I've had some great times on that river. 10 o'clock at night. It's a little spooky sometimes. Better do it with a buddy, I think. But
no, for sure. It's a little creepy, not going to lie, but you know what?
But there is something just kind of surreal about the whole experience. It's a really fun thing to do.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. You got razor blade going there now.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So, yeah, this is I just use a Wilkinson razor blade. And what I do is I use that cone as a guide.
To try to kind of copy that angle.
Yeah, to kind of get an angle going. Back, and then you can pull down your collar. It's a great reference point, the cone, right? It makes it a little bit easier to work with.
Mm-hmm. If somebody wants sort of an easier version of this fly tie, I mean, not that this isn't a crazy hard pattern, but the deer hair can be kind of intimidating to some folks. Like, you could tie this, just a Conehead Zonker too, right? Could just do like break Zonker.
Yeah, I was on the upper credit with a buddy, and that's what he had. He was using this Conehead Zonker, but had a trailing hook on the rabbit tail. It was lights out, man. He was just he was doing super well with just simple black rabbit strip.
Sure.
Maybe a little bit of ice dub, conehead, and trailing hook, and they were smashing it. Yeah. I like rabbit. I love using it. I think it looks great in the water. Yeah. Really easy to work with when you're tying.
And you could also do, like, if somebody wanted sort of that spun head, because the spun head is nice. It pushes water, right? Yeah. You could do, like, if again you're intimidated by the deer hair, not that you should be, but like, you could use some sculpin wool and just take a clump of wool, stick it behind the head, be done with it, and that would push some water too. Do a decent job of that.
Yeah, sculpin wool's a good call. I started tying with that. Even laser dub. Laser dub's a good one to work with as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's as simple as that. This is like virtually unweighted, and I'll cast this on lightweight rods, my dryfly or my nymph rod or whatever, and just kind of skid it top water, and just get some crazy attacks by some hungry brook trout late early evening kind of thing. So try it out. It's a great pattern.
That's awesome. All 3 great patterns. That's amazing. I hope everybody has a chance to try them out this season. I think it'll pay off well, and not just on the credit. Like, if anyone's watching and their home water is the Grand or Saugeen or wherever they're at, I think you'll find great success with these things. Flip back for sure. Here.
So yeah, three fairly easy patterns to tie. I encourage. You're right. Like you said, you could use these on any river, Southern Ontario. Try it out. Fairly simple to tie. Very versatile materials. You can use it for a ton of stuff. So get at it.
Very nice. Well, thanks for sharing, Mike. Good to have you again. Glad we got a chance to redo this, and we've got you coming back, as I mentioned. Let me just confirm the date here, make sure I don't get it wrong. It is February 4th we have you coming back. So that's another Thursday, 7 p.m. That one we will actually do live. So we hope that everybody can tune in for that. In the meantime, if you have any questions, anyone, feel free to shoot them our way or Mike's way on Instagram. Be happy to help out, and we'll see you all soon.
Totally. Thanks, Chris, for doing this, for redoing it. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for being here. We'll talk soon.
All right, Chris.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.